As much as I want to let that play for the next 30 minutes, let's get started, shall we? I am finally settled. It's been a day, Mr. Keith. It's been a very long day. How was you? Let's see. Oh, yeah. Drop link in the chat so I can close tabs. But I don't know if I've used that song before. But I love that song, so even if I have used it before for an intro. Bury me, Charlotte, wounded knee. Let's kick shell. Doing alright, just a scratchy throat. I feel that. I think it's the weather. It's been very dry here. Not supposed to get rain till like the weekend. Last thing I wanted to do was agitate it more with streaming. Yeah, that's fair. Conserve your voice a little bit. The ups and downs are not helping. Yep, that's fair. Ups and downs, giggity. Yeah, and depending on what game you play, you might end up going for longer than you intend. And then you just kind of, before you know it, it's like, ah, shit, what did I do? But yeah, I got coffee. I got to sit down. I missed Sunday stream, so I wanted to do a stream this week. It's kind of what I was feeling on Sunday. Just not the right energy. I was starting to... Thought maybe I was catching a cold or something. I was getting scratchy in the throat. Thankfully, that was not the case, but... yeah, that's why Sunday stream did not happen, as it should have. So I just said, I'll just hang out. Hello, Birdie. Alrighty then. What are you up to today, tonight? Anything fun? Any fun plans? On a Wednesday? It would probably help if I started pulling up what I was going to talk about. One of these days I'll hack up whatever it is that I'm trying to hack up. Watching you, some Big Mouth, and some Fork Knife. Nice. Racking up the levels. I was doing that on Destiny yesterday, because first of all, I wanted to knock it. Well, I've knocked out the rest of my stasis nonsense, so I never have to grind that shit anymore. And then I just started messing with my hunter, starting to unlock all the shit on it. So that was my day yesterday. I haven't even bothered with the Halloween event thing. I didn't even bother with it while it was active. Oh, hey, put this stupid helmet on and then run around and kill things. Okay, that's exactly what happened last year. 3 huzzahs. Yeah, no, fair. And then we knocked out Val's little origin session yesterday, or last night, because we went for quite a while. So he's pretty much squared away. And what is today? Wednesday? I might be free tomorrow to do another one, for whoever is free. For anybody who wants to do one. Alrighty. So getting into the design stream stuff. There's one last comment I'm going to make about 5th edition, and then we're going to talk about other things that you can do. Different games, different genres, different tabletop stuff, and how to design for it. And if I'm a little frazzled, then my brain is all over the place, so we'll see how well this goes. And one great thing about 5th edition is it's you can separate the mechanics from a setting, like Forgotten Realms, for example. And you can do a lot of fun things with the engine itself. And one of those things is you can incorporate different themes all together. And if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, Critical Role used to, back in the day, do one-shots. I don't think they've done one in quite a while, not one that I've heard of anyway. They did a Diablo one, they did a Lord of the Rings one, they did one for Doom that is really freaking cool. I very, very much recommend that one. Essentially incorporating different franchises, because they stream it on Twitch. You know, they had to get all the licensing permissions and whatnot, but around the table with a bunch of friends, without any kind of streaming stuff, you can do whatever you want. Because there's actually 3 things that I've created for Middle Earth. And I'm going to use that as kind of my first example here. Because essentially you can boil it down to, okay, you want to play the Fellowship races, or do you want to play the Dark races? Because, you know, very much like I made the comment about Critical Role, they did a one-shot where they played a bunch of orcs and trolls and whatnot. I think it was for when Shadow of War came out. I think that was why they did it. It's been quite a while. But essentially that's all you have to start with, is, you know, if you wanted to run a Middle-earth game with the mechanics of 5th edition, it's doable. You just, essentially, I would say stay to like the 1st or 2nd level. And make, because Middle-earth is very much high fantasy, very low technology, and kind of not quite a moderate level of magic, but there is magic in the world. Most people would call this a sword and sorcery kind of game. Most things are dealt with swords. Some things they could hurl magic at them. And I have not watched, oh my god, what is it called? Rings of Power. Looks great. I haven't watched it, and no spoilers. Or I will banhammer you. I probably won't banhammer you. But essentially, you could just take... And Middle-earth also has a number of different tabletop games if you wanted to use their engine to do so. But I'm just throwing out options that you can do. I still need to watch it, so prepare for trouble and make it double. Blasting off again! Now I kind of want to see Pokemon and Team Rocket in Mordor. But yeah, you have the Fellowship races, you have the Dark races, and you'll notice there's even my own creation there for one of my stories that I would run. The Shadowborn. Born, whatever. And even here, using 5th edition terminology, I essentially, doing a little bit of research, mind you, you find a point in Middle-earth that you think, oh hey, as a DM, you pick a place in Middle-earth, and it's like, okay, can I flex some creative muscle here? And essentially, you just make it. If you're streaming it on Twitch, again, there might be licensing permissions that you need, but if you're going to try and use the name Middle-earth or anything Lord of the Rings oriented, I don't think there's a problem with that, but just be aware of that. And essentially everything listed here exists already in the Lord of the Rings MMO. So this is nothing, this class breakdown down here is actually, some elements that I pulled. And if I had enough time, I would actually create an entire engine to support, make it unique instead of borrowing from 5th edition. Or I just go find a Middle-earth tabletop book. There's quite a few of them out there, last I knew, so. And one of the great things about tabletop games is you can incorporate different things from different games and just combine it all together into a melting pot. And as DM, all you have to do is offer them up some character options, race, class. If I know there's a lot of people who really like the background system from 5th edition that they incorporate into different games, go for it. And even different, Middle-earth oriented spins on different backgrounds. Just go for it. If you get a creative itch and you just want to do it, just do it. Like Nike shoes, just do it. Or Shia LaBeouf, whatever. The guy that screams a lot. And even you can do what I did here. The Shadowborn are just a a fictional creation that I injected into Middle-earth doesn't actually exist. There's actually a game, and I think I've talked about this before, of Bjornings. Essentially a number of Bjornings that hid away in Moria. And if I ever ran like a Middle-earth oriented game, that would be one that would be on the table. But then you just create your story, whether you want to tie it to direct elements of what happens in the books or the movies or whatever. Completely fine. I don't think there's any real restriction other than just make sure you know, if you're going to use a lot of magic, for example, it's like Middle-earth is kind of a very low magic, low to medium level of magic. Some people have it, some people don't. Mostly it's the Gandalfs and some elves that run around using it the most. But maybe it's a new age of magic in Middle-earth. I don't know. Whatever you figure out your reason, just run with it. And trying to think. Actually, I'm going to pull up that file for one more second, and I'm going to open this other one to make sure there's nothing spoilery. Okay, yeah, that's not very spoilery. Okay. So essentially I'm going to show you, once Catcher catches up, capture, or a capture could get stuck. Okay, there it goes. I forgot, if I do things too quick, Capture freaks out. But essentially, this is one of the ideas that I came up with. One of my initial ideas for a game set in Middle-earth. Very simple concept. Essentially, you're part of the force at words at Osgiliath, and essentially orcs branch away from the main force. And essentially, timeline-wise, I would think I would set this kind of before the Fellowship actually arrives there. If you need some kind of clarification. Anyway, it's kind of how I thought about it. And essentially the party is just the Fellowship races that are sent after these orcs. Simple, straightforward. Figure out what they're doing. Are they going for reinforcements? Are they going for... because there's some kind of dissension in the ranks? I don't know. That's essentially what the party's job is. And that's honestly the entire basis for the adventure. Just follow these orcs, find out what they're doing. And there's a lot of dialogue here, which I wrote quite a bit long time ago. And some of it's getting kind of cut off by the chat capture. But anyway, dialogue's not the point. This is just something that I wrote. The one major point I want to make here before we move on is you just make a couple of NPCs for players to interact with. And then, you know, Middle-earth has got a lot to it, actually, when you start really drilling down. And, you know, looking at a map of Middle-earth, you just make names of nearby places that your players might want to go. And then you try to have some kind of idea of you know, what they want to get into. You know, and you could make this more elaborate, but for the sake of simplicity, I left this very much. There's orcs that left the main force. That's worrying. So the players have to figure out what's going on. And I know a couple of ideas of how I would present it, but this is kind of all you need. All you need is a motivation. There's orcs, go find out what they're doing. It's very much as simple as that. That's Middle-earth. And like I said, so long as you keep the idea of the level of magic in Middle-earth within consideration, you should be just fine running a game in it, tabletop or otherwise. So that's the example of that. I haven't actually written any of this down anywhere, but if you wanted to run something like a Transformers game, all you need to do, essentially, is give all of your players access to combat wild form, or wild shape. Wild shape. Combat wild shape that the druids get, so they can just use a bonus action to switch in between vehicle and robot form. And then you create a scenario for them to interact with, and boom, there you go. It's that simple. I'm surprised they haven't done it, to be fair. Because that feels like... It feels like they should have already done that. A Transformers tabletop game. But honestly, if you just wanted to use 5th edition terminology, that's all you need to do is give everybody Autobot, Decepticon, whatever. All you have to do is give them combat wild shape. Let them shoot their guns as an action, and let them transform as a bonus action. It's that simple. And, you know, that's more of a sci-fi concept than what the 5th edition kind of instills, but you could do it. You could just, and even if you're going to use like the spell system, just come up with a more technological name like Codex instead of spell list. Boom, there you go. A Cybertronian Codex, or oh my god, what is it called? Brain, please. God dang it. Teletron, that's it. I didn't have to Google it. The Teletron style system. And there you go. You know, if you want to be good oriented characters, Autobots. If you want to be Decepticons, be evil. Evil. And honestly, it's that simple. It might be a little hard to wrap your brain around some elements, but it's fine. Is there anything else? Oh, Dragon Age. Duh. Why is it not in... Oh, because I moved it out of that file. Yeah, very much a Dragon Age. Dragon Age has its own tabletop game out there. I have the book for it. I don't have the dice for it, but I have the book for it. So I could easily enough use my knowledge of Dragon Age to run a game. I know Rin has mentioned she would love to run a game into Winter a number of different times. Again, Shia LaBeouf just screaming, just do it, you know? And I think I've mentioned before, my game would essentially be set in the Anderfels. You know, like the point I made earlier, you find a place. If you're going to use a chronological map, or one that is already embedded in the setting, you can do that. And later I'm going to tell you about how to do the opposite of this. But you find a place on the map, you start thinking about what you want to do with it, and you just make it. If it, that'll, oh, actually, there we go. The capture cuts it off again. I'm going to have to learn how to compensate for that one of these days. Make a marker there right there. I'll go back and edit it later. But there's a lot of people who love Dragon Age. Rin being one of them. Jenny being one of them. And, yeah, this is just something that I did some research on, since I'm trying to use a place in the actual world of Thedas. You know, I found a place on the map. I figured out what I wanted to do with it. And boom. I just started with a little piece of clay. And then you just keep adding on to it. And eventually you have your own adventure built up. I think Moss is also somebody who is really deep into Dragon Age. Now that I think about it. And essentially races. Let's see if I can't. No, I can't get all of that on screen. Oh well. You decide your races that you want to allow. And yes, you'll notice on this list that I added golems. I'd be okay with allowing a player to play a golem. Let somebody try to be a shale kind of entity. Why not? It's a tabletop game. And then you have your classes. Yeah, that'll fit. Yeah, you have your classes, which the great thing about... Oh. Speak of the lady herself. Hello, Moss. How's it going? Does I still have your emotes? I don't. They must have ran out. Okay, you can just get a shaky revenant. Good, just getting in from work. Eating. Good thing. Good food, I hope. But yeah, because Dragon Age is a game where, it's condensed down, essentially. There's 3 different classes, and then there's a bunch of branch-offs that happen from there. Essentially subclasses, but they're called specializations in various books. And even if a player wanted to be a Grey Warden, for example, that's also an option. As far as what I would allow, and there is rules in the Dragon Age RPG book talking about if one of your players wants to be Grey Warden, or even a group wants to be a Grey Warden group. I think it takes up like an entire 2 pages, I think. Factions, those are ones that I made myself. I don't know if these actually exist in Thetis already, but if not, that's fine. They're my own factions that I can use to engage with players, one way or another. And I just pointed at it like you could see. There's a map behind me on the wall of Thetis. I have it, poster. Because if you buy the tabletop RPG, it also comes with a map of Thetis. So I basically just jotted down all the names of the different towns, or settlements, in some cases. And even using Google, which that was a pain in the ass, I'll tell you that, because there's not much information really about the Enderfells in the wiki. Or in the wikis. There's some like snippets of things, but it's a little disjointed. So I guess that is one of the things I can mention is if you're going to Google things, Google can be good or bad. So just keep that in mind. There's a bunch of names, there's landmarks. Essentially, all of this information was taken from the map that I got that is hanging on my wall. So, and I just realized this isn't complete. Oh well, one of these days I'll finish it. But yeah, you could run a Dragon Age game in 5th edition if you really wanted to. Your classes. Oh my. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, 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 wow. Wow, wow, wow. Welcome in, Roth. How was you today? I could try to whistle some of the parts to that song, but I don't know if doing that into a microphone, I don't know if that would be a good idea or not. Bit tired, but okay. Just getting back from the job thing. Oh, hey! Did you get the job, or you're still applying? Also, Moss, if you're still here, what did you get to eat? Curious minds wish to know. Yeah, like I told Mr. Keith earlier, it's been a long day. But now everybody's coming home and relaxing. So I guess I picked a good time to stream. Now I forget what point I was actually on. Don't know yet. Seemed to go well, but I'm terrible at knowing these things. Applied and interviewed at the same time. That's fair. I know you said you were looking for something. Didn't know if it was locked in or not. No, you're good. I haven't even been going an hour. But yeah, you could use, the Dragon Age tabletop RPG system. And if you wanted to adapt 5th edition to do the same kind of thing, you could do it. Because essentially you take the fighter, you take the rogue and the ranger, and the spell casting classes, you just drop them in as your basic staples, and then all your specializations is where you can start really delving even deeper into things. Probably easier to use the Dragon Age system, but I'm just throwing that out there as a... You could do it if you wanted, if you know how 5th edition works, and it works for you, then as DM you can just make little augmentations like that and still have fun, because that's the whole point. Let's see, we talked about Middle Earth, we talked about what did we talk? God, my brain's all kinds of confused. Yeah, we talked about Middle Earth. We talked about Transformers, which I didn't have anything written up for that, but that's all an option. We just talked about Dragon Age. I think I'm going to use one more example. Well, maybe two. The first one being Star Wars. Da-da-da-da. Wait for capture to catch up. Star Wars has a tabletop RPG out there, but you could adapt 5th edition to do the same thing. You just have your paladins as your Jedi and Sith, and then you have your clerics running around as your consulars, or even your inquisitors. But honestly, I don't know much about the Star Wars tabletop game. I know Duck had brought it up a couple of times, and I think he even has the book for it that he showed off on stream a while back. And a lot of this of what I've developed here, and honestly, I'm even making my own tweaks and things to a Star Wars game. So stay tuned for that in some time in the future, if I ever figure out how to make it work. But honestly, all you have to do as a DM is have your players decide, do you guys want to be Republic or Empire? Or do you want to be somewhere in between? Dun, dun, dun. And essentially, as a DM, you just, honestly, for a Star Wars game, all you need is a planet. Just one planet. You know, it can be something that's been discovered before, or you can do like I did and create an entire star system that is my own, that I can play in, that I could run games in. And I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler for... But honestly, this is not quite... I wouldn't say spoiler. This is information I would give to the players. And depending on what their answers were, or how they wanted to go about it. And very much like when I was talking about the codename Wintervein continent that I was working on, and showing you guys how to create your own fantasy campaign building blocks. The same kind of idea applies to Star Wars. You just strand your players on a planet, and they have to figure their way out off of it. And that's kind of what all this stuff is. And essentially, the Datamoth system, I don't believe actually is a thing in Star Wars. If I am mistaken, please let me know. I will find a different name because I don't want to piss off Disney. I was going to say Lucas, but he doesn't control it anymore. Because back in the day, the alternate universe stuff that used to be in a lot of the random books and such for Star Wars, there was a lot of great stuff out there back in the day, but nowadays Disney controls all of it and threw it out. Unfortunately. Here's a bunch of worlds that I came up with that honestly I could throw my players onto any one of these and they would probably have a good time or a bad time depending on circumstances that they get themselves into. Class-wise, very much like when I made the point about Dragon Age. Like I said, I don't know what all is in the Star Wars tabletop RPG book, but I started developing my own thing, basing a little bit of it off of the MMO, the Old Republic. At least with a little bit of the structure. Empire versus the Republic, and all the crazy shenanigans that happens in between. But essentially, 4 different classes for each of the 2 sides. If I had enough time, I could probably create some independent ones. If I really wanted to. But I haven't had a good enough idea for any of those, so I haven't done it. Here's a bunch of Star Wars races. Which, it's not super detailed about any of these descriptions, it's just some base level descriptive text. And just because I want to, at some point, play an Ewok, in one of these games, I added Ewoks into a lot of my notes. Because who doesn't like an Ewok? Come on. And yes, there are Gungans here too, so. The good and the bad. As much as everybody hates Jar Jar, his kind have to kind of be represented a little bit. Ewoks. And honestly, I would very much if you've hung around with some of the chaotic folk that are in the Nightshade Discord, everybody loves chaos, so. Misa not the Jar Jar. Speak of one of them, the little chaotic friends. Hello, Miss Faye. How are you? You had to say Nightshade Chaos. I did. But yeah, just because even if as a DM I want to throw an Ewok encounter at my players and see if they can deal with Ewok chaos, this is the Countess of Chaos. Hooray! I just love throwing random shit at people. And what better way than an Ewok in space as opposed to Endor? Which I don't think they ever get mentioned ever again after the first trilogy. In anything Star Wars oriented, I don't think they ever get mentioned ever again, which is sad because who doesn't like Ewoks? Ah, wow. Yeah, some of these races, I looked up the Old Republic wiki, and I used a little bit of the information there to kind of create my own descriptions of each one. And then there's some exotic ones from Ewoks, like from the original trilogy, Gungans from the episodes, Cathars, which I think Cathars are actually talked about more so in the comic books than they are any of the other media surrounding Star Wars, and so on and so forth. But essentially that's... And the way that I've kind of created this adventure that I would send players on, I could run this in a number of different engines, game engines. Yeah, I could see if I can't find that RPG that Duck was showing off. You can run it in a similar engine. And even Duck has said many times that he would love to run a Star Wars game. I am waiting to see if he ever does, because I think that would be badass. I'd definitely be down to watch or play in it. But yeah, as far as and the great thing about Star Wars is all you need is a planet. You have very high technology level. If you want to play into some magic oriented style stuff, you know, Jedi and Sith basically do that. And you just run with it. I'm Countess of Chaos. Hi, I'm alive. How's y'all? Been getting my butt kicked by phone calls, but I'm done for the day and things are in motion. Yay, motion or something. The motion of the ocean? Is that some of the phone call stuff that you were dealing with yesterday? And trying to get done? Yeah, I don't think there's anything else I could talk about with Star Wars. And honestly, you could just go sci-fi as hell with it. Lurk, be right back. Okay. Have fun storming the castle. What was the other one I was gonna? Oh, vampires. Because everybody loves vampires, don't they? I would hope so. Essentially, if you like the anime Trinity Blood, you'll very much recognize what the hell is going on with some of what I'm about to show off. Because that's kind of the basis that I decided to use for a vampire game that I've been working on for quite a while. I love vampires. Because you can essentially use, you know, some vampiric fantasy elements, and then you can even use technology. And you can combine the two. And all of this is setting dressing. But honestly, all you really need is just a place to start with your vampires. Your vampires. I thought there was more to this file. I guess not. Anyway, you know, and one of the things about this vampire game specifically is I incorporate the idea of humanity and vampires. Methuselah. And even a little bit of lycanthropy. Because some people like being werewolves. So I added a little bit of an element of that could be and honestly, one of the other elements of this game is I incorporated some Vampire Dark Ages elements into it. Is it here? No, that's the town information. Where is... Do. No, it's not that, because that's just more... Is it this one? No, that's the 5th edition adaptation. Where is it? Oh, and I guess I locked up capture again. Oh, there we go. Aha! There we go. Some Vampire the Masquerade. Honestly, I use the Vampire Dark Ages stuff and started kind of developing my own vampire stuff. Using some of the same methodology, just kind of tweaking it a little bit. The high clans, the low clans. So anybody who's familiar with the vampire games by White Wolf will kind of know what I have been trying to do here. And even then, there's some of this that isn't finished. But essentially, that's another element of gameplay that gets layered on top of this vampire game that I would run. Or you can just use Dark Ages or Masquerade or any of the other vampire games that are out there, tabletop-wise. Or you could just make one, because that's always a thing too. Because even in 5th edition, let me find it actually. Oh, there we go. There you go. You wanted vampires in 5th edition? There you go. We still on for Friday night? I'm gonna say yes. She can say whatever she likes. Whatever you like. But yeah. I know that Pathfinder actually has the... What is the actual name that they call them? They're essentially... No, that's not it. The Dompier. But I kind of made my own for 5th edition, anyway. Which is always a thing. If you find a game engine as a DM that you like, maybe only work half a day and I'll be off. Val's is still off Saturday. I'm going to say yes. They made you guys work all this week on your days off, so they can give you the weekend. And if they don't, I'll put a turtle boot to their asses. The DM has spoken. But yeah. And that's also a thing. If you find a game engine that you like, and then there's things you just want to that aren't supported, make it. You know, I keep doing all these homebrew streams, primarily about, you know, 5th edition, but honestly, you can apply them to a number of different tabletop games because they all kind of have the same foundations. And we're playing Monday. We are playing Monday. That's also something I need to check on. There might be a week or two from now where I will be unavailable, but I will let you guys know. I found a game engine, but then I forgot to put oil in it, and it cracked a block. Well, crap. I guess you need a new engine. We are playing next Monday or else. I think it's 2 weeks from now, but I will let you guys know. Don't make me buy someone. I'll go vampire. Yeah, and depending on what happens with Sarah, because I learned last night after I got off of Origin session with Val that she ended up in the hospital, so that's also a thing that's happened, so I don't know what's going to happen with that yet. The house is a total disaster, as usual. I don't even know yet, and they're still trying to figure it out, so... Yeah, I'm still waiting to hear back about what's going on with that. Oh, cut! And as far as like designing for vampire games, that's one great thing about White Wolf is they have a couple of different book settings. You know, they have modern day vampires, they have old school vampires, they have the werewolf RPG. I'm kind of, for the thing I've been kind of messing around with, I've been combining elements of each kind of thing to run in my own little unique way. And honestly, as a DM, you can do that as well. If you run into a brick wall, then you essentially become a designer. And you design warning, incoming doom song.
I'm gonna sing the doom song now. Doom 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 doom
Would you please stop singing?
Proximity warning. Planet ahead.
Grr! We're here! We're finally here!
The end. Okay, I feel better now. I think being a DM and being able to customize everything in your world is, yes, it is very liberating. And I know there's some DMs that have a hard time I don't know, reaching that point. And I think that's one of the things I don't like about the Forgotten Realms, is they tend to write things in their books that people take a little too literally, and then they don't understand that they could. It's only a guide, it's not the way you're supposed to do it. Because even Gygax back in God knows when, people would write and call him up and ask him, what is the ruling, what is the actual rule for blah blah situation, and instead of telling people with a lot of rules lawyer nonsense, he said, "Okay, how did you run it at the table?" Okay, that sounds interesting. Stick with that. But at some point with Wizards of the Coast, they very much. I don't know if it's just the language they use or something that they ingrain in people that makes them kind of narrow viewed, where they read something in a book and then they take that as, hell, that's the reason sage advice even exists on Crawford's Twitter and whatnot. It's because people don't have they don't have it in their mind that they're supposed to create, if they run into a problem, they're supposed to create the solution. It's very much and once your mind kind of eventually breaks out of that and you start thinking of the Kobayashi Maru kind of mentality, change the conditions of the test. I got an award for creative thinking. That basically works for both DMs and players. Having your own agency in a tabletop game, both as a DM and a player, is so beneficial. And most people don't realize that they can do it because no one told them that they could. But guides are meant to be followed to the letter, no flexibility, never changing. All rules, all written, all boring. Wow. Yes. Intrepid advice. And I realize there's some people who don't have that mental flexibility. They very much are taught, primarily in schools, that these are the things you're supposed to think about. You're not supposed to think about this other stuff. And they basically create compartment. What is the damn term for it? It's basically where you compartment carpet words. You would think I'd be good at saying words by now. I'm not. Compartmentalize. Thank you. That word. And then they don't think outside of that box. Thank yous. My brain just could not put that word into words. But essentially, as a DM, you always want to always be thinking outside of the box. And I realize there are some tabletop RPGs that are very linear oriented. You know, hell, just the idea of the experience point system is very much there's a beginning and there's an end. And they very much think of that as a linear path. Hell, even a lot of video games anymore are like that. You know, they trick you with the illusion that you have choice, but then they turn around and they're essentially guiding you down a path. And for some games, that works. For other games, it doesn't. You know, very much like Djibouti Cheeks. She was playing Last of Us for the past few streams. And, you know, while there is some linearity there, you actually get your own agency to engage as much as you want to. You know, there's not a set path. You know, you eventually get to kind of an end point, but how you get there is not... I guess, spoiler alert, when you get to the hospital at the end, you can gun people down or you can sneak around. You have that option of one or the other. Or maybe you want to do a little bit of both. But then there are some games where it's very linear, where it's throwing you down like a hot dog down a hallway. It's not really a spoiler, but because I didn't go into any super detail about it, I'm just saying. Because there's more stuff happening at that point in the game, but I'm using that as a fresh example. Also, while I'm thinking about it, is it 1 Y or I think it's 2 Ys actually. I think it's 2 Ys. I'm gonna check real quick. Channels. Yep, it's 2 Ys. Okay, I did it right. I did a thing right. Hashtag feed Ariel. Yes. But yeah, I think she's doing more Last of Us on Friday, I believe. She did the first game the other day. Now she started doing the second one not last night, the night before. God, my days and nights are all foobarred right now. It wasn't last night, it was the night before. I think. She can come in here and yell at me if I'm wrong. But I think she said she's doing more Last of Us 2 on Friday. So go check her out. I don't know, I slept. Well, she was streaming for like 10, 12 hours. And even just using like Super Mario Bros. As an example, that's very linear. Getting to Final Bowser is very linear. Hey, there's Pengu Bro. Shaking cow butt. How's it going, sir? Hope your day is going well. Let's see, there was something else I was going to talk about. And now my brain is distracted. I think he's taking a little bit of a break from streaming, but yes. Go check out Nova. Go follow him, and then watch him. Watch him do the penguin things. But like you said, he's taking a little bit of a streaming break. I should take better notes. I should learn to take better notes. Let's see, we talked about Middle Earth, we talked about Transformers, we talked about Star Wars, vampire games. And honestly, one of the great things about tabletop games is you don't have to commit to a giant campaign. You can run one-shots and be just fine as a DM and kind of build up those DMing muscles until you're confident enough to actually run something a little more longer term. And even as just something as simple as questing design, very much like what I made the point of in Middle Earth is, hey, some orcs are doing something strange, go find out what they're doing. It can be that simple. Or if you're like Matt Mercer from Critical Role and you have this huge universe bouncing around in your head, you can approach it that way. I wouldn't recommend it right out of the gate, but you can do so. Is there any questions? Because my brain is a little fried. Is there anything I'm forgetting to talk about? Is there anything anyone is curious about? My brain is bananas. Banana splits drenched in chocolate. curious about that circle there. Right there. Which one? They're all color coded on the map. That one. You have to tell me which color. And it's kind of one of the things that I'm surprised Blizzard hasn't done this, is create a tabletop game. A legitimate tabletop game. I have to make that distinction. Out of the Warcraft universe at this point. Because it really doesn't feel like they started off the MMO with a lot of interesting ideas of how to get people involved in that universe. And then they completely scrapped it when they made Cataclysm. And they basically turned something that was like this open sandbox kind of game and storyline that people were following into more of a linear grind. The one that's not colored or on the map. The other circle. Well, when a mommy circle and a daddy circle have strong enough feelings for each other, they start doing emotion and they start bouncing off each other. Sometimes there's 6s involved, sometimes there's 9s involved, sometimes there's just 8s. And they're just aiding each other. Public service announcement. I do not know what that terminology is. I just made that up. Well, that last part. I don't think I want to play a WoW TT. It's too linear. Not like the baby circles. Because honestly, I think the Warcraft universe would be a great... Very much like when Wizards of the Coast made the... oh my god, what is it? The Magic the Gathering book. Whatever it's called. You know, delving into an entirely different world. And honestly, you could run a 5th edition game with Warcraft universe on it, in it. With planeswalkers, that still confuses me. Yeah, I am also confused about said planeswalkers. I kind of like the idea initially, and then I was like, and then you end up in this confused... You basically end up in a loading circle. But in your brain. But yeah. I'm honestly surprised that Blizzard hasn't made one. Because a lot of people like World of Warcraft, obviously, but... Honestly, I enjoyed Warcraft 2 a lot more than I liked 3 or even WoW. But yeah. Because Warcraft 2 was very simple and straightforward, for the most part. Azeroth gets invaded by orcs, and essentially this is a fight for survival. Perfect motivation for both sides, actually. And if I was going to make something like a tabletop game, like a one-shot or something set in the Warcraft universe, I think I would rather use that as a basis rather than some Warcraft 3 was way too much about Arthas. Which, don't get me wrong, there's good and bad points to that story, but and that's kind of all I can say about it for now. And then apparently even the WoW devs got very pissed off about having to constantly use Arthas in a lot of their content creation, apparently. So apparently nobody liked him. But he was a linchpin for a lot of story development in that campaign setting. Or that game setting. And then WoW is just all kinds of noodly and crazy. Which I honestly don't know where to begin. To be honest with you, I keep seeing the ads for Dragonflight, and it's like, how does this even make sense? Mechanically, it's kind of cool. You've introduced your Dragonborn into the game. Cool. Way to go. Now what? Which honestly, and at the end of Cataclysm, when you beat frickin' Deathwing, the Dragonflight matriarchs and patriarchs are all standing there on the rock, and they say, "This is the age of mortals." But now what is it, 2 expansions since then? And now the dragons are back, and it's like, okay, you guys screwed things up so bad that we have to come back. That's when you know your universe is slowly falling apart. Except, in this case, it's very much taking a nosedive, in my opinion. Which, I might be wrong, they might be able to spin the story well enough to make it actually legible and fit in, but I don't see it. The past of no return. Exactly. And I realize, it's their MMO. They have to keep it going some way or another, or else they can't afford to do anything else. Because that's the only thing they have going on right now. Oh, and this thing called Overwatch. Which some people are liking, most people don't. Which I guess that is a point that I can bring up. And maybe somebody will agree with me, and maybe they won't. It's completely fine. I think Overwatch originally started as somebody taking Shadowrun as a tabletop RPG, changed some of the flavoring. Instead of the gritty Blade Runner vibes, they kind of took it in a more what is the word I'm looking for? A more bright and colorful. You know, instead of being dark and gritty like Shadowrun is, they kind of changed the tone, but they still implemented things like Overwatch and Talon, which, if you need me to explain this, then this very much shows my age. G.I. Joe versus Cobra. They basically... I feel like Overwatch is just a tabletop game that essentially became its own game, and it's based on, and I believe it's Michael Cho who was the original writer, and they basically, and honestly I was interested in the original story of Overwatch. Oh hey, here's good guys, here's bad guys, here's these robotic things, which that's a newer element, because I don't think there were any robots in G.I. Joe. Unless that's an allegory for, like, Transformers, Autobots, and Decepticons, which I don't know, because Overwatch has a very terrible way of expressing its story. And if you try to read the frickin' wiki, it's a nightmare. Because I've tried. And tried to make sense of it. And it just does not make sense. At all. And it's not even explained in the game. It's a bunch of random blurb nonsense from, I think it's the random books that come out. Which I bought one of those. Still doesn't tell me a damn thing about why this world is the way it is in Overwatch. It's basically this graphic novel. And I think the one good story in there is the Macassidy one. I was going to say something else, but the Macassidy one. Where he's just on a train, trying to get to where he wants to go. Talon shows up, shoots up everything, and then he basically fights Talon, and then he's the one that gets blamed. And then there's another story in that graphic novel that is tells a little bit of the history of how Anna lost her eye. But it's such a small piece of a bigger story that I really wish they would just freaking tell that story instead of all this piecemeal nonsense that they do. The gunslinger, formerly known as McCrizzle. No, I don't know. Did McDonald's ever make a McGrill? They made the McGrill. Did they ever make a McCrizzle? Does McDonald's need to sue Blizzard for naming infringement? I don't know. And even with Overwatch 2, they said that eventually the story is going to start rolling out, but honestly, I don't think they will. I think they will essentially just keep drip feeding people and keep the people throwing money at them, and they're not actually going to deliver on the things that they say they are. Because hell, Diablo 4 was supposed to be out a year ago. And now that's in development limbo, so... Which I guess is another franchise we could bring up, is Diablo. Diablo would make such a great tabletop game because it... Well, Diablo 1 and 2 would make a good tabletop game. 3, not so much. And then I have no idea what the hell they're doing in 4, so I can't speak to it. The McRib tastes like McGrizzle. Yeah, eventually, which is, and I was trying to think about the other day, where did everything go so wrong with that company? And I don't really have an answer for you. Sometime after Lord of Destruction, everything just started going to shit. The socketing system in Diablo is really, yeah. I've even thought about, you know, when I was showing off the Shaman homebrew, very much that's a lot of how I was thinking about how the totems would attach onto existing armor. Is very much like a socket style system. And it's like, if you could condense that down into a game mechanic that was a little easier to use, that would open up so many new avenues. Because I could see something like a socketing system of, you know, hey, I have this armor, it has these points in it where you can put stuff into it. And then, yeah, very much like materia. And you can customize it, and you can, instead of being locked to, you know, like a fighter, Eldritch Knight even, you know, you could expand your spell repertoire so much more with a socketing system. Instead of just being bound to whatever the two schools of magic that they bind you to. And even the Arcane Trickster, you're limited to wizard spells. It's like, why can't I take druid spells as an Arcane Trickster? They never explain that. I'm actually looking it up now. Yeah, abjuration and evocation. Which there's only so many of those in the game. I'll tell you that right now. So your options are so limited. Do not jeer. There. Almost jerked the head off because I caught the cord in the book. So yeah, a socketing system would be great. And honestly, it makes me kind of wonder, you know, why hasn't Final Fantasy actually made a tabletop game? Or have they? Let's Google that. Is there actually one? No, that's a board game. Looks cool. Actually looks cool as shit. Not gonna lie. Tactics fantasy board game. Interesting. Because hell, because Final Fantasy has, you know, their class system. And they could just, hell, because they make the game so interesting nowadays. It'd be like the perfect market for them, honestly, just thinking of it. We could definitely do a total homebrew session based on socketing, where gems, orbs, totems dictate spells. Yeah. See, that would be a great system. Where you could just, you know, augment, like, customized changes to, you know, without having to venture out for, you know, specific armor. It wasn't popular if they did. Contain a whole class as a socket set. That's kind of what the shaman is intended to do. Is very much when you hit 20th level, you have all your totems, and then they all synergize. Instead of most classes where it's broken up in pieces to where because I think the paladin, yeah, I think it's the paladin, and I keep swearing there's one other class that has a 20th level ability. But most of the classes have things at like 14th level, 17th level, 18th level. And I realize they did that for multi-classing reasons, but at the same time, Chocobo Dungeon Party. Yes, I saw that. And honestly, if I had enough time, I could just adapt essentially each all of the Final Fantasy classes into something that would actually work with a tabletop game instead of a video game. Final Fantasy VII Remake is getting an official board game. Oh, that's that thing that's up here. Yeah, it's a lot of board game stuff. It's not actually tabletop game stuff. But yeah, that very much makes me wonder why hasn't Squeenix actually made a tabletop game? Since they love product placement and a lot of Tetramaster card game. Is this an actual thing? I'll look at that later. Anyway. Honestly, if they could just make a board game style thing of Triple Triad, I'd be all down for that. Anyway, I need to stop looking at this stuff. I'm gonna get lost in a rabbit hole if I keep doing that. So is there anything anybody has questions? How long have I been going? 2 hours? I kind of burnt through all the stuff I was looking to talk about pretty quick. Because honestly, I think, with part 1 and this being part 2, it's basically going to give DMs a lot of information and hopefully some motivational thinking that helps them kind of figure out what they want to do, even if they're not using something like 5th edition. And when you decide to become a DM, you decide to become a designer. And I guess we could talk about video games as well, because it very much goes hand in hand. Because, a lot of story-oriented games, you have your twists, your turns, your dramas that happen. And that's usually the writer's job to, make sure they're all represented equally. Because even when it comes to video game development, you have to know all the noodly bits about technology, but hell, I have an entire folder in my laptop here that is just nothing but video game ideas. I have many questions for Dalentarth. You can always DM me. You can always message me and ask. And if it's something that I can answer, then I will. Nope, I'm waiting until Monday. Okay, that's fair. Just putting it out there. Why do I keep getting so many notifications? I muted most of these things. Yeah. We will play even if it's just me. Yeah. I even considered that as a possibility of, if people can't show up, it's like very much like the idea of, man, I'm tired of waiting, I'll be back, and just kind of wanders off. And then comes back later when the group is there, all together. I did consider that the other day. Man, we've been waiting here for goddamn forever. I need to get up, I need to stretch, I need to go just walk away from this damn campfire. Yeah, Solo messaged me, I believe it was this morning. Yeah, it was this morning. So, take a walk and listen to the voices. Yeah. You guys figure out what you're gonna do, and how long you're gonna wait, and I'll be back. But yeah, Solo messaged me this morning, and whenever he's available, I'll link up with him and get that taken care of. I know Mr. Keith mentioned that he wouldn't mind playing through a little thing, little origin session. I think Court did as well. And just trying to figure out when people are available is the hard part. But yeah, we'll figure things out. And with the holidays kind of coming up, hopefully things will slow down a little bit. You know, people won't be running around with their head like chickens with their heads cut off. It's all hard and all bad for us. And then things happen like when you guys got called in. But anyway, if there's any other design-oriented questions, speak now. Or I'll end the stream and start up a new one, and then we'll work on homebrew stuff. Just so I can make the, when I upload these to YouTube, a little easier. How do you design a Moogle 3D print? I don't know. You're the one with the printing machine. You and Roth are the ones with the printing machines. I know nothing. Also, what kind of Moogles are we talking about? The fuzzy cute ones or the naked ones with the little red poofy? Restart with brewing of homes. Brew homes, brew homes. Well, it's the only design question I has right now. Super fuzzy cute ones. Hooray! Alrighty then. Oh, what? Oh. Hooray! And honestly, if there's more design stuff that people are interested in, we can always revisit this topic. But my brain is very much exhausted everything I could think of. So yeah, I'm just gonna end stream and then I'll start right back up again and then we'll just work on homebrew stuff. I shall see you in a moment.